if that's better.
Yeah, I'm just.
Lou's just seeing dead people. It's okay.
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of
Lou, if you just move to wherever you think we should be, I can move over next to you.
Yeah, I'm good. Hold on a second. There you go. How's this? Here we go. Perfect. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, Dan, welcome. Nice to have you. Are we started streaming, Annalise?
Yep, you guys are streaming. Go for it.
All right. So, welcome.
On camera for the streaming, given we've moved?
Yes,
yeah.
you are.
Okay, cool.
Okay, even though the camera's there? Okay, we're good. Okay. So, Dan, welcome. I'm Lou Kerner with Crypto Mondays, and we're here at the Ethereal Summit in their virtual reality room here in AltSpace, brought to you by Bits and Tokens. And I have the guest, Dan Laser, with IDEO.
Elitzer, yeah. IDEO Collab Ventures. Yeah, no worries.
Collab Ventures. And so, Daniel, why don't you tell us about your kind of crypto journey? When did you see the crypto light to start?
Sure. So I think my crypto journey started back in early 2013. I was working at a nonprofit organization that focused on microfinance, and I'd seen Bitcoin before, I think, in random places, but had thought it was a kind of stupid fake internet money and didn't really pay any attention to it. And when it spiked up to around like $260 towards the beginning of 2013, I was like, what is this? Why are people still valuing it? And so I started reading a little bit more into it and started really falling down the rabbit hole. And I happened to be heading to grad school at MIT in the fall and expected to find a lot of other people who were going to be interested in Bitcoin there. And there wasn't actually very much going on. So I ended up starting the MIT Bitcoin Club. We did an experiment the following year. I worked with a really brilliant undergrad named Jeremy Rubin, and we did the MIT Bitcoin Project. We raised money from MIT alums and people in the industry and gave $100 in Bitcoin to all of the undergrads at MIT in the fall of 2014, and ran a study around that, and was a lot of fun, very exciting. And then when I finished up in the spring,
what was the price of Bitcoin? What was the price of Bitcoin?
The price of Bitcoin, it was in the like 325 to 425 range. So the students who held onto it did very well, and actually most of them, at least for the initial few months where we tracked, most of them held onto it. So I've received messages from a few of them over the years asking for help finding their Bitcoin. So I'm sure that at least some portion of it has been lost. But
have you been able to help them find it?
Not that much. I mean, to the extent that they were using non-custodial wallets. If they lost their keys, there's really nothing I can do.
Yes.
I think we did. If I recall, we had a relatively even split between people using self-hosted wallets versus at the time Coinbase and Circle were the two big players in the space. So I think the folks who did that were able to probably recover just reaching out and doing an account reset. But I don't know the current status of most of those students.
And Jeremy is still in Bitcoin.
Jeremy is still very much in Bitcoin. Yeah, he's contributed a lot to Bitcoin. Worked as a Bitcoin core developer. Has been working on a really cool Bitcoin improvement proposal that allows for much more flexible scripting in Bitcoin. Some really cool stuff. It's also works on things like mobile coin, which is coming soon, and Handshake and a few other blockchains that are very Bitcoin compatible. But he's working very hard on this, trying to get it adopted. And for him, it's now transitioned from being a technical challenge to implement what's, I believe, basically check lock time verify. And he offered to do it as secure the bag initially, because it's do some really cool stuff, securing your Bitcoin better and to protect it and recover it in the event of certain types of key compromises. And now it's really I don't want to call it political process, but a governance process of saying, look, I've developed this code. I think it's really cool. I think it's safe. We've had enough other people sign off and say, at least, this isn't a bad idea, but needs to get a bit more support from the community and the developer community in particular to agree to integrate this into Bitcoin and get it adopted. And if that does happen, it's going to open up a lot more possibilities in terms of programmability on top of Bitcoin. Still not to the full extent of something like Ethereum, but allowing for some very cool use cases. The ones I'm most excited about are largely related to Lightning, and the ability to automate the opening and closing of Lightning channels. But we'll see, how that goes. I'm excited to see him continue to take it forward.
Super interesting. So, how did you transition from MIT to IDEO?
Well, IDEO wasn't really on my radar. I can't draw a straight line, and so the idea of working for a historical design agency was not something that ever crossed my mind. But there were some folks on the team, Joe Gerber and Matt Weiss, who were starting this new group within IDEO to say, hey, let's move design further upstream and work with emerging technology. And the first area they chose was blockchain technology. And they realized they needed somebody who knew something about the topic. And so they went out and they were both MIT alums. And so they saw what we were doing at MIT and reached out to me. And I ended up joining as kind of a subject matter expert for this experimental R&D group called IDEO Collab. And over the next few years, we did a lot of work. The lab developing collaborative.
When did you join?
So I joined in spring of 2015.
Okay. So still very, very early days.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember in 2013 when I first started paying attention, like talking to my brothers about it, and one of them was like, "Oh, you're too late. Bitcoin is over." And not only is Bitcoin over, but there's the real entrepreneurs have gotten in now, so there isn't really much opportunity left. And obviously that wasn't the case, but it's I think honestly, 2015, yes, it was early. We are still early today. There is still tremendous opportunity. Yes. We aren't even 1% into the development of where this technology is going to go and the ecosystem that's going to get built around it.
You're preaching the choir.
Yeah, so it was exciting to join then, and built a lot of collaborative proof of concepts with some fantastic large companies and startups working together. We worked with Chain.com in the early days. Adam Ludwin actually was an IDEO alum. We did a little bit of stuff with Consensus early on. We worked with Citigroup and NASDAQ and Fidelity, and built some really cool stuff together. But ultimately, we realized that we weren't going to be able to bring this technology forward and achieve its potential primarily as a research lab, even a very cool collaborative design forward research lab that worked with large companies. That really it was the early stage startups that were going to truly bring this technology forward. And so we didn't have a business model at the time that was well aligned with doing work with early stage startups, because you can't do six-figure consulting engagements with early stage startups as a design agency. And but we were meeting these awesome teams. The Open Zeppelin team, Damien and Manuel, they incubated Open Zeppelin in our studio in IDEO in the fall of 2015. And Esteban Ordano was working with them at the time, the founder of Decentraland. And they sat with us for 6 months at IDEO. And, we worked with Consensus.
And your office, where your office is in the Bay Area?
Yeah, in San Francisco, Pier 28.
Okay.
And we had Consensus was at our first kind of kickoff event that we did back when I think they had 6 people on the team then. Wow. So we were, we had a lot of close connections. Ryan Selkis, actually, we're buddies. Seeing him up here before, we were buddies from pre-crypto days for both of us. And we worked with him when he was at Digital Currency Group. They got involved with us early on too. So we had a lot of these connections, a lot of great opportunities that we saw and we couldn't really participate in. So we could help a little bit, but it was more us gathering knowledge and sharing it with these corporates. And we said, well, what if we raised money and we could actually invest? And then we would have a business model that's aligned with actually digging in and helping these companies that we really believe are going to change the world. So that's what we ended up doing. We ended up going out and we raised a traditional venture fund where we can invest in both tokens and equity. And we're probably about evenly split at this point between the two in terms of what we've done. And we've made over 20 investments to date over the last couple of years, and we're actively continuing to invest in early stage companies in what we frame as distributed web, but largely as crypto, and increasingly is mostly DeFi. The fund invests very broadly. I personally spend 90% plus of my time focused on DeFi at this stage.
And so, just before we go into that, who are the LPs in the fund?
Yeah, so IDEO is one of our LPs, but really a small minority LP. We raise most of the funds from family offices, from high net worth individuals, corporate strategics, and a couple fund of funds. And so, I'll say it's for a first-time venture fund, especially one that is affiliated with a design firm, and in doing crypto-related stuff, it's incredibly diverse investor base, and we feel very fortunate to have the trust of this group, and we've been trying to pull them in and have this be a much more participatory process than you will see from most venture funds. And so we try to do more personal updates. We try to tap into the insights of our LPs. We really think that LPs, so the investors in a venture fund, are really an underutilized resource for a lot of funds.
Makes a lot of sense. So when did you have your first close and make your first investment?
So we actually started investing out of the kind of partners' capital initially. We personally put some money in and made a few investments. We got very lucky to have a family office out of New York that really believed in us, who started co-investing with us. And then IDEO let us do a few investments off their balance sheet, and we rolled those early investments into the fund. So I think our first actual investment out of the fund, we did, I think Masari was either the first or the second, and the other was Open Zeppelin, were some of those investments that we made early on. So I think the first one was late. It was I think it was the very end of 2017. But we actually didn't do our first close for the fund until fall of 2018, and then final close fall of 2019.
Okay. So, so you, as a fund, post the bubble period for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. So there are probably some early investments made that were certainly 2017 hangovers in terms of some of the valuations, but I do think that from day one we've had a pretty rigorous process in terms of how we look at these investments. And while I'm one of the folks on our team that's been in crypto the longest and was very much, I still believe a lot in Bitcoin. I was very much a Bitcoin maximalist for a long time. Looking through most of 2017, looking at these projects and saying, this is ridiculous. And I was one of the last people hitting on the team to be convinced that we should actually try to formally do a fund, because I was just looking around saying, this is insanity. Most of these things have no reason to have a token. I don't want to be participating in kind of pump and dump type activities, which, to be honest, there were a lot of funds at the time that really were doing a lot of that, just, pre-buying and then selling the ICO and exiting. And
it was a great way to make money.
It was a great way until it wasn't. But yes. I think also, if you want to,
exactly,
for all of us in this space, there are easier ways to make money than to do stuff in crypto, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to invest, do it right and invest for the long term. It is nice that there is a different liquidity profile for some of these assets, but if you're buying things and looking to say like, oh man, this is going to pump and I'm going to be out in 6 months, I'd say, that's fine. Some people can do that. I have zero interest in doing that. So we only invest in and partner with teams where we want to be on this journey with them for years, because as we observed earlier, this is a very, very long game. And if we don't believe that the companies and protocols can be worth billions of dollars, getting it at an early stage valuation under 10 million and then selling when it passes 100 million, sure, you could get some very nice returns, but if we thought that these were only $100 million opportunities, we wouldn't be pulling the trigger.
Totally appreciate that. Although, the whole thing, obviously, for me, who is around, for the internet bubble, it's very, the history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And you say
For
same
sure.
thing with the internet. A lot of companies, who you scratch your heads and go, how is that a company? And they were public and billions of dollars. So there are points in time. I have a joke. I have a word I use to describe the tendency of markets to become bubbles and crash and then become bubbles again. And I call that capitalism.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I think we're seeing some in some ways more pure forms of capitalism emerging in the crypto space.
Yeah, let's hope. I think that's part of why we're here. So you talk about spending your time in DeFi. So let's start off with what I think is the most exciting thing in DeFi at the moment, which is stable coins. So what are your thoughts on kind of what's going on in the stablecoin world?
Yeah, apologies. I'm sorry. I've just got a notification my headset power is low, so I'm trying to plug it in. So I don't.
I hate when that happens. That's a rookie move.
Yeah, clearly. This is my first VR conversation. Sorry, you were asking about stablecoins.
Yes. Well, I was pivoting the conversation to DeFi, and I think at the moment, from where I'm sitting, it's a lot of super interesting things going on in DeFi, but the one that seems to be scaling the most at the moment is our stablecoins.
Yeah, stablecoins certainly are scaling a lot. I think Max Bronstein had a fantastic piece a couple weeks ago on the evolution of the crypto euro dollar. And I think that is probably going to drive a lot of stablecoin demand. What I think this is doing is it's starting to deliver on some of the early promise of crypto from the perspective of somebody who came into this more from the technologist side rather than the kind of monetary policy side. When I saw Bitcoin and it finally clicked for me, it was the idea that you could have this protocol that allowed anybody with an internet connection anywhere in the world to receive, store, and send value to anybody else anywhere in the world. And that was a fundamentally new capability. And at the time, the challenge still persists with I would say pure crypto assets today is that it's confusing, right? The concept of crypto assets is still very confusing to the average person. The UX is still horrible. The volatility is a big problem, and there's not enough other people that accept it. And the nice thing about stablecoins is they help with the volatility aspect. They help somewhat with the understanding aspect because you don't have to understand what is Bitcoin. You need to understand I've got a digital dollar here. We still have a ways to go, I think, to make it really usable. Although some companies like I think Dharma has done a fantastic job making crypto more accessible through the use of stablecoins. And I think we're getting there. We're still, very, very early in the network effects in terms of other people accepting it. But we've done multiple investments as a fund using USDC to make the investment. And I'll tell you, it's easier that way often compared to sending traditional wires.
And what was interesting, I actually one of the shows that we do at Crypto Mondays, Crypto ZTV, is called "Stablecoins Are Killing It."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we had Joao Regnate, who's who runs USDC, and a senior guy there, and yeah, I mean, he talks about like companies in China are using it to pay their employees, around distributed or pay their suppliers. And the super interesting thing to me about that was, and I asked him, I said, oh, that's interesting. You have a sales team that calls up or and no, they don't. It's just people figuring it out on their own. Like it's not surprising that you figured it out because this is what you do. But I still think you're one of the few VC, you're the only VC in the space I've ever heard say that, which makes a ton of sense. And so, I would think, a great business fund would be somebody who would help people, who would help, companies leverage, USDC and stable coins to do these kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I think Circle has pivoted in that direction, right? they're all in on stable coins. They're all in on USDC and going B2B rather than B2C. And I was an intern at Circle the summer of 2014, which was kind of like their pre-launch summer, and worked on some localization and other stuff there on the product side. And it's been interesting watching their evolution. I think some of their moves have been very counter-cyclical in terms of what have happened. You can look at kind of maybe calling peak or calling bottom for them when they sold or they stopped supporting Bitcoin. That was kind of the bottom for Bitcoin in that 2015 2016 period. They also when they then went kind of launching all these different crypto assets, it was kind of the top in 2017, towards the end of 2017. But that said, this is a team that understands the long-term vision of crypto very, very well. They've got some amazing product people, amazing talent. And while I think, I would have loved to have seen them stick closer to what I saw as their original vision on the consumer level. And I really wanted them to do something like a more consumer-friendly Coinbase. That's not ultimately where they ended up, but I do think that Jeremy Allaire, as the CEO, has had multiple successful B2B businesses. And so this may fit his strength and the strength of the team there even better. And so I'm very optimistic about Circle's future and the future of USDC and the Center Foundation. I think, while Libra gets more attention in the mainstream, obviously because of the situation with Facebook, I think this is going to be a very interesting brawl that's going to occur between the different centrally created currency issuers.
Yeah, it was. I had the pleasure of listening to a Ernst & Young last week had a 3-day blockchain conference. And one of the panels I listened to was on stablecoins. And one of the speakers was from the Federal Reserve. And, the most interesting thing he said was, the main thing that they're solving for, obviously, is security, right? They can't, it's got to be, and so, and because of that, he said, that it's not going to be programmable.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think in some ways that makes sense, right? And actually, Andreas Antonopoulos has a fantastic piece from probably, I want to say like 2014, 2013 era, where he talked about the idea of having very simple, single purpose base layer protocols. And that if you look at, even outside of crypto, at protocols that have gotten spread widely, they tend to be very single purpose, very narrow. And so I think there is something to Bitcoin specifically, right? Staying very narrowly focused on like, this is money, and we want to like have it be money and just limit the attack surface around that and just maximize around a very, very core set of features, right? And so security is hugely important on this open network for a central bank issued digital currency. I think it's interesting that they mentioned security as the number one thing. I think control in some ways would be more important for them. Rather
but
than
they wouldn't say
security.
That, right?
yeah, sure. But I think what is interesting is, can you build other layers on top, right? Like the stuff you mentioned earlier that Jeremy Rubin is working on, is stuff that you can then like kind of allows for more stuff to be built in the layers on top, as we're seeing with the Lightning Network. We're going to see the same thing. We're starting to see the same thing in Ethereum in terms of additional things that you're going to build with layers on top of Ethereum that allow for scalability and allow for whole new use cases that aren't possible on the base layer. And so I'm a big proponent about figuring out as we're developing these protocols, and I think it's great that the bankers are even thinking this way, is what do you need to do? What is your core function that you must get right and that is important above all else? And then how do you build off that base and allow for an ecosystem to grow on top of that and add new functionality and extend it in different ways. As we're already doing, right? The US dollar, as it is, doesn't directly have something into blockchains, but we've seen, people go out and create Tether and create USDC and create these other things. And, they're effectively building off the infrastructure, quote unquote, built, that is the US dollar as it exists today.
Yeah. In the last question, and then we'll move on to other DeFi related things. But, so in the stablecoin world, there's kind of USDC, there's Tether, there's Maker. Is there any other project in that stablecoin world that you're, super excited about?
Yeah. Well, so I actually think, I don't hold any synthetics. Or any SNX. I'm very intrigued by their ecosystem and kind of going down the rabbit hole a bit on it. I do think whether that's the ultimate intent or not, or how they're positioning it, something like SUSD might actually end up competing with DAI if synthetics evolves in certain ways. I think there's actually an interesting opportunity for companies. There's one that I've been spending some time with called Shell Protocol. That is very similar to Curve Finance in terms of using an automated market maker to do a stablecoin to stablecoin exchange. But if you look at the LP shares in these stablecoin pools, they're like meta stablecoins, right? They give you exposure to these different stablecoins, and they both earn you, interest from having the underlying coins in Compound or Aave or wherever, and then you're also earning trading fees. And so that allows for higher yield and more stability. And so I think there's some really cool stuff that's going to start to happen as we're seeing increased issuance for all these different stable coins, both getting essentially the market caps up on the existing stable coins, and then the other ones that are sure to be issued, giving people good UX for swapping between them, or hopefully not caring about that. It's going to be big. But I think there is something around kind of decentralized exchanges, DEXs, that are custom built for assets that are intended to be stable in value and be roughly equivalent to each other.
And are there, everything that we've talked about, has been pegged to the dollar. Is there anything interesting that's not pegged to the dollar at the moment?
That would I consider a stable coin? I mean, I think we're in the early stages. I think there have been a few coins that have been issued pegged to other currencies. There's just not volume, not demand for that. And to be honest, I'm not really sure where that will emerge. That US dollar is globally demanded, and so it makes sense that we're using it in that way here. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me that we're going to see the other ones. Yeah.
Right, but it's just interesting. I mean, if you think about that, we're, how much are we just recreating the digital version of the world as it is now, and how much are we using this technology to create all new, brand new things, and bring the world to a potentially better place.
Absolutely, and I think I don't want to minimize the importance of monetary policy and the ability to set different types of monetary policy in an automated fashion through crypto assets where there is not, direct human intervention. I think that is a tremendously powerful tool that we've only had, 11 years of that to see it evolve. And I think it's going to increasingly play out on a global stage and be important. That said, we're not there yet, and so it's great to see the development of these use cases just on top of the dollar. I think we're going to create what we're creating here is actually kind of like the crypto dollar in the same way the petrodollar, right? It's the dollar was very tied to oil in the kind of the last go round. I think now, ironically, for some of the early crypto adopters, we may see a lot more happening, where the dollar is supported by crypto's existence and continued growth. You're still looking, I'm seeing some audience members like moving, but did Lou disappear? Yeah, okay. I see those emojis over there from Christian. Thanks for letting me know it's not my connection that's it's not working. Well, while Lou's gone, it looks like I do have access to host tools. Can toggle the mute all? If anybody's got questions, we can. Doesn't look like I can toggle the mute all. Oh well. Hmm. So, all right, we're here waiting for Lou to come back. Annalise, are you still there? Yes, you're up here. Awesome. Although you seem to be muted, I don't know if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Oh my God. I hate when there's you know how mics have the little like mute thing on the headset. I have one of those and I must have pressed it.
No worries.
Anyways, I was like listening to your conversation, really interesting. Are you like a VR guy or what?
I'm not a VR guy. I got this Quest kind of as we were heading into the quarantine. I'd used it previously and blown away. Yeah, I mean, still had to pay a premium on it, but it was like totally worth it. I'm
how much did you
trying to find more time.
How much did you pay for yours?
Oh gosh, what was it? I think it was like $525, $550.
Okay, and is that for you have the Quest?
Yeah, I've got the Quest. So it's I think supposed to be like 400. So
yeah, we probably got the 64. Well, there's two. There's a 64 gigabyte, and then there's the 128 for the.
Yeah, no, I did the 64. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, but I just went through the played a few games, but I just went through the training for this Echo VR thing. Mm-hmm. Blew my mind. It's like Ender's Game, but you experience it yourself.
So Echo VR is really cool. It's private beta. I think actually we're getting a game together tonight. Like there's a group of us talking about it. Echo VR is really cool. I've been playing it for a while now. When the private beta came out, I side quested it in, but it's a fun game. It kind of gets me dizzy. I don't know if you've tried what's the name of what I'm thinking about? You can only get it on side quest right now. You have to side load it. Hyperdash is also a really cool game. It's also in its beta.
Oh, it's called Hyperdash.
Hyperdash, yeah. You have to side quest it, but basically it's like a shooting game, but you kind of have to make sure that your team it's like capture the flag, but for like 3 points, right? But like you guys are shooting each other. Think of it that way. That's probably the best way I can explain it.
Nice. Okay. Yeah,
it's really fun.
I want to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of cool games you can check out on the Oculus, but. What are you doing?
Just like
you're like looking up,
looking around. I was like, okay, we got the screen behind us now.
Yeah. I had the actual conference going while everyone was here, and then we switched off to the live speakers, which were you guys. So here we are, and I guess his headset probably died, is what it is. Oh wait, he's sending me crying faces in Telegram. Let me go look.
Yeah, he was like telling me this was a newbie mistake, not needing to plug mine in.
Yeah,
do you not plug his in?
And he called you a newbie, didn't he? When you said
I know, yeah.
Now his headset's dead. Well, all right. Well, it doesn't look like he's coming back. So what I'll do, is there any last minute things you want to say on the stream? Anything for anyone out there watching?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say is I'm super focused on DeFi in particular, but Ideacal Adventures does much broader crypto stuff as well. If you're working on something early stage project in this space, we'd love to talk to you. We're going to be announcing some pretty cool stuff soon, ways that a lot more DeFi projects, especially, can get involved with us, and would love to hear from you. I'm, personally, some of the areas I'm excited about, anything with a liquidity pool, automated market makers, insurance, fixed rate loans, personal tokens. This stuff is all very interesting to me. So please reach out to me on Twitter at Bielitzer. You can find the group handle at IdeaVC. And we'd love to talk. Oh, is that Lou back?
Yeah, Lou's back.
I made the rookie mistake. It's so funny. I powered it on.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, I powered it on, and I didn't cross my mind that I've been on 3 hours that I would run out of power. It's the first time I've ever been on this long.
Well, there you go.
It's okay.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a great thing. Where we have Annalise. This is great. There you go.
I'm right here.
So I'm sorry. I know you were just winding up.
No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, if you're gonna make it back, so we just no worries. I was kind of wrapping
we didn't think you were coming
because
back.
we didn't.
If
you're going to come back.
If you guys want to continue talking, feel free. You'd let me know.
Yeah, no, I think we're 5. I think we're good. I think we've got some great video. I thought we had a good talk. Certainly, super interesting hearing your views on these different things. I'd love to have you back in some of the other shows that I'm doing, because you obviously bring a super unique perspective.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. My first VR discussion. So yeah, I'm excited to do more of these.
Okay, terrific.
Thanks for having me.
Dan. Thanks, Annalise. Thanks, Bits and Tokens.